What's up, people? I'm Strident, and I'm back with another video. I'm still laughing at this picture. I couldn't resist putting this picture up. I'm here with my homeboy, oh man, Agent O. I'm sorry. I couldn't help it. I'm here with my homeboy, Agent O. You know it's bad when we start off laughing this hard. Today we wanted to talk about the problems that we're starting to have, or problems that seem to be popping up with fans, you know, today's like comic book fans in general. Man, there's so many issues and so many things to start with, but we're gonna just throw out a bunch of random stuff, you know. We just noticed that a lot of the fandom is not really, they're not really doing positive things for the industry. It seems like today's fans have been kind of the reason why comics have been so stale and kind of on a constant like a downward spiral, because they just eat up whatever's given to them, and they have no respect. Many of them don't have respect for the stuff that came beforehand. So when a new writer pops up and gives them like today's version of insert your character here, they just eat it up and they act like it's the greatest thing ever because it was actually marketed to them, for them, you know what I mean? And I know it makes us sound like old guys because we're like, you know, back in the day, back in my day, you know, comics weren't like this. But, you know, it's true. Back in the day, they gave us a product. Either we liked it or we didn't, and then we moved on. We read what we liked. We didn't bitch about everything. You know, we supported what we liked. And our money actually went somewhere because the comics prospered. I mean, comics being around for, what, 70 plus years? I mean, it kind of says something, you know? Not to say that I was around that whole time, but, you know, a good 20-something years of that, I was actually old enough to buy my own shit, you know, and make a contribution.
I mean, we just had more stories, better, things that were done better with the characters that are done, they're not done as well now.
Yeah.
And like you have a lot of fans. Like it seems like the companies are listening to a lot of the wrong things. Yeah, that fans are putting out, and not to pay attention to the right stuff. I mean, if video games can take, you know, fan response and actually take it and make their games better, like what the fuck are comic book companies doing? Like, what are the big two doing?
Yeah, well, some video games do it. Most of them.
Well, I guess when I think about that, I'm thinking of like Prototype. Like the first Prototype wasn't that great, and Radical took all the people's responses and suggestions, and they made gameplay-wise, they made the second one a lot better. And you know, they still failed with the storyline, but you know, maybe they didn't. Maybe nobody suggested it. I don't know.
Yeah, no one mentioned the story. I don't know, but you know, in all. There are examples of like fans saving franchises and fans keeping a franchise alive and fans' input actually helping. You know, look at Masters of the Universe in any format except for movies, because they've only had one movie, but the freaking series will not go away, and it's because the fans love it so much. And those fans had kids. Those kids see the passion that their parents had, and those kids grow up and have grown up with the new stuff, and they've supported it. And you look at the toy line still going, even with those horrible designs. So many of those toys look like straight dog shit. And
heck, you've got people re-customizing those figures.
Yeah, and some of the customs are better than the ones that are on the actual mass market. Yeah. But the shit's still going, because in general, the love for the line is it's kind of like a cycle, you know? They put out whatever they put out, the fans take it in, they like it, they put their money back into it, and then they give their input, and then the company listens, and then they put that into consideration when making the next step or taking the next step. And that's why the series has prospered, you know? Voltron has been around for a long ass time, but Voltron fans keep that franchise going. Godzilla fans keep that shit going, because Godzilla is not mainstream. Like, he's like infamous, we all know who he is, but like every time a movie comes out for Godzilla in the US, it fails horribly because people in the US try to pretend like they don't like that shit, but people in the US,
they try to change, instead of keeping it instead of keeping Godzilla the way people remember him, they
always try to
changed
change
so
stuff,
much and tried to Americanize it, and nobody took to it. And plus, it was just a really bad.
That movie
script.
was horrible. But like I'm talking.
But
about,
I know what
like,
you mean. Yeah.
Real Godzilla. Like when Godzilla 2000 came out, we were all happy to see him, but in the theaters, the movie didn't hit like the kind of numbers that American blockbusters make. You know what I'm saying? All because it's a guy in a rubber suit. But despite that, Godzilla is still a household name. Everybody still knows who he is. They're still making toys. The toys they range from cheap to like fucking ridiculously expensive. They're still working on another movie. Japan is still doing shit with him. There's been several movies since 2000. And, you know, it's like he's not going anywhere. You know what I mean? These are examples of like franchises that the fans, they put in their work. You know, they show their love for something and then it keeps going. But you notice with like comics, for whatever reason, it just seems like they're too quick to just take what's given and not say anything. Like, you have all these fanboys complaining, but then when the movies come out, more than half are always like, it's awesome, it's great, with nothing else to add to it, you know?
Even if it wasn't.
Yeah, especially when it wasn't, you know? And then, like, when it's actually good, technically sound, you get all the complaints. People complained about Thor. People complained about Captain America. They were pretty sound movies. They weren't, like, Oscar award-winning shit, but, I mean, how many comic book movies are, you know? Even the beloved Dark Knight trilogy is not Oscar award-winning shit, you know? I think people were nominated for stuff, right? Wasn't like The Dark Knight up for nominations because of Heath Ledger's death? And I'm not even gonna pretend
I
like
think
it
they
wasn't.
did, but I think it was just because of his death, honestly.
Because,
like that Joker, if you combined the Heath Ledger Joker and the Jack Nicholson Joker, you kind of would have
the perfect
a whole Joker.
Yeah, but people don't want to say it because they want to jump on that bandwagon that, you know, Heath Ledger was so amazing. He did a good job. He was better than he was in any of his other movies, but he did not actually play the Joker. Just like the Batman in that is not it's not Batman. It's a guy dressing up in a Batman costume. I mean, if he can quit because someone died, he's not Batman. Because Batman can't quit doing what he's doing. But this is like, you know, that's a whole different that was a whole different video or topic for another video. But this fan stuff, what is it with fans and the lack of information? You know what I mean? Like, if you're a comic book fan, the only thing you're there to do, the only thing that qualifies you to be a fan is that you read and you take in the information given to you in comics.
You remember the information.
And you remember it, yeah. You remember it because comics are supposed to be like the equivalent of mythology in modern times. You know, that's one way of looking at it, a legitimate way of looking at comics, past the fact that it's pretty pictures with these outrageous stories. And comics are starting to get that respect, you know? But all in all, my issue is that a lot of fans, they don't really pay attention. They don't know what was going on with these characters. They're not very discriminatory about what works in a comic and what doesn't work.
Seems now they're taking a generalized approach.
Mm-hmm. Because the movies take a generalized approach. Like, if you watched a couple seasons of a particular cartoon based on a comic, you don't actually know the comics. You know about the cartoon based on comics. So you have an idea. When you turn around and then go and read your comic book versions, then you realize that there's a whole lot more to what you saw, but it was dumbed down for a general audience. And I try to tell this to people, and people always argue the point.
Double-fold for movies, too.
And yeah, movies are even worse, because movies dumb it down like tenfold so that every audience will get it, you know? So, you know, that's always the problem that you have when you get a movie version of a comic, you know? I mean, shit, that was the problem you had with movie versions of, like, novels, you know? Like, a novel will give you shitloads of information because it's up to you to put it together in your mind. The movie can't really spend that much time, you know, breaking shit down in detail the way that a novel does. I mean, just look at the Bourne movies and the books. You get so much more information in the books, but that's just a difference in medium. So when you get on these message boards and these these fan sites dedicated to different comics and stuff like that, we shouldn't be having problems talking about what you know, what we like about these characters or what makes these characters interesting, et cetera, et cetera. But you have tons of people who get on there just because they saw the movie. You know what I mean? They're not really like, they're doing themselves a disservice as a fan.
They're casual fans.
Yeah.
It's like you have casual gamers.
And nothing's wrong with being casual, but I mean, like, you have people that fight and they argue and they get at you in the same vein as a true fan would, or a hardcore, I shouldn't say true, a hardcore fan would, without the knowledge to back up what they're talking about, and I think that's lame. And it still comes back to the fact that if you read more, you'd probably be inspired a little bit more to either give proper input to the companies to tell them what they're doing wrong with these characters, you know, based on what you've read now versus what came before. Or you'd be inspired to stop reading this shit, like, so that the numbers would speak for themselves, and they would have to change the things that they've been doing, because, you know, Hollywood's business model doesn't necessarily work for, you know, comics. You know, that's big screen shit. That doesn't work with the page, you know what I mean?
Hollywood technically doesn't care about comics. They care about the money that's made from the comics. So, you know, as long as everything is put together as a money-making vehicle, that's all they really care about. They just, you know, they want that return on their investment.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, that sucks for the fans. You know, the fans get hurt the most because, you know, you might not get the, I guess, envisioning that you've grown to love. And I mean, that's, you know, that's the problem we have with the Batman movies. It's the problems we had with some of the earlier films.
Like the X-Men movie?
Yeah, like that, and in Green Lantern.
Yeah.
But it sucks.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like it's changing that much. I mean, Marvel's doing a better job taking what works from all of their movies and improving it every time they make a new one, you know? It's like they've got this rhythm going that, like, they're doing things right. Because this way casual fans can come into the movie and just check it out because they like Iron Man's costume. And it's enough, you know? Whereas hardcore fans will come in and they see all the little Easter eggs and they hear all the dialogue and they're like, damn, they were talking about something, there were hints to something else, you know, that came from the comics. Like, oh, he mentioned Extremis, or hey, he mentioned so-and-so who's going to go on to do this, you know, or, you know, Nick Fury showing up in all the movies. You knew what it led to because we knew, because we were fans. We read comics, you know, we're versed.
And it felt like the movies felt like comics because they had that connection.
Together. Yep. Another thing, I was thinking of this while you were talking, and I totally, like, it left my consciousness. I hate when that happens. It's like we're getting old. Man, I hate when I lose my train of thought. But, you know, in general, there's a lot that needs to be done to make these things better. People need to stop just taking what's given, you know, and not having any type of input. And, man, I hate when that happens.
Or, I mean, just writers in general. Some writers need to stop trying to leave such a huge mark on the legacy of a character by changing things so drastically that fans that are used to seeing a character a certain way, all of a sudden they can't connect anymore because, you know, now Batman's letting people know his secret identity, and he's starting a corporation called Batman Inc. Like, some of that stuff is stuff that, you know, Batman being paranoid as he is and people finding out who he is, he wouldn't do because
it's out of character.
Yeah, it's like too many people would start drawing conclusions. Like, too many of the wrong people would draw conclusions to that, and it puts you off. It puts me off anyway. I don't know, but I mean, I know other fans out there have said that they like that idea, but it's just looked lame to me. Everything about that has looked lame. The characters that they've drawn in, that they put in, look lame. Even like Batwing is lame. That parkour French Bat guy looks lame. The Chinese Batman, it's like they wanted to bring in these other Batman characters, but then they didn't want them to make them as cool as Batman.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, a lot of things need to be overhauled, but the fans need to recognize. This is, like, I focused on fans. I brought up fans because it's just like, anytime you bring up a topic that needs to be fixed in comics, these cats don't really, it's like they don't get it and they don't want to get it. I did the video on racism. How many people told me, "Oh, you guys find racism in everything"? Are you fucking kidding me? In America, we live in America, it was practically fucking founded on racism.
Yeah.
The comics industry was practically fucking founded on and during some of the most racist periods in our history. You look back at Superman comics, he's flying around the globe beating up every person of color. Beating up Africans with bones in their noses, beating up fucking Japs,
zipperheads, calling them zipperheads,
yeah, calling them all kinds of names and shit. And it was the time. So like when people talk about racism not existing, the shit always did.
And sexism,
yeah,
you know?
with women doing specific things. You know, they can only play certain roles. They always got to be the damsel in distress.
Or you have like covers with Wonder Woman like tied up in some very suggestive poses.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
like the equality aspect has always been like missing. The fact that the industry is fueled by these old white men, and like people point this shit out, you know, they do what they know. If they don't come to the hood, they can't write the hood. But how many books do you read where they write a black character who protects the hood, and you got people talking in 1970s slang, and it's fucking, you know, it was 1990. You know what I'm saying? Or like almost 2000, and they're still talking like that. Like, come on. And fans are not doing their duty. You should read that shit, see it, notice that something's wrong with it because it doesn't reflect the world you live in, and say something. And granted, it is fiction, so there's a level of, you know, of suspension of belief when it comes to certain things, but that should be for the superheroics, not for the world that is built around that the character inhabits, because that world is supposed to most of the time mimic the real world. You know what I'm saying? Like, at least a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, comics have always reflected the times that we live in, unless it's like taking place in some odd, you know,
a fictional city. Or
or you know, a different time period or whatever, or alternate universe. But yeah, they've always updated the characters to fit in our, you know, in whatever time period that we're in.
Yeah.
I forgot what I was gonna say now.
It's happening to you too. Yeah, I hate that shit, man. I just I noticed that, like, for me being a fan, there are periods like whenever we have those debates, there's a period of time for all of the characters that I like that I consider the character at their peak, and like, when I talk about the character, I usually draw from that one time period or that one media or whatever, a medium. Like Batman, you got to pull from the animation, because in the animation we've seen Batman go from a young guy all the way to an old man giving up the mantle. Whereas in the comics, they only did a lot of that shit after the animated series started bringing this shit to the forefront. There were stories, but those stories didn't do as well because no one wanted to see old Batman in the comics for whatever reason. No one wanted to see someone else put the Batman, because how many times did they give the mantle to someone else and everybody's like, no, don't you know, comic book fans and change. It doesn't work with them. Even though change is the only constant in reality, change in comics just doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? Like, people still complain about that shit. And, you know, so when people talk about Batman or they ask me about Batman, I mean, I've read a shitload of comics. It was the first book I ever read, but the comics were limited because they were episodic in nature, so they have to keep the story going like a day-by-day type of basis. They can't let Batman age past a certain point, so you always get to a point where they have to start over because they can't let him get older than...
Or he can't die.
You know,
you know he's never going to die.
So in the animation, you always got all that shit that you didn't get in the comics. I mean, granted, they can't go like full-on rated R with the violence or the atmosphere or even the just basic content in general, but like, they managed to get enough of what the mood and what Batman goes through on a day-to-day basis, the psychology, etc., that he feels like a complete character, you know? And you didn't have like 20 different writers fucking it up. You had Paul Dini for like a long time, you had a handful of other people, and then you've had individualized writers for the entire story. You know what I mean? For all those the animated direct-to-DVD ones. So I feel like that's the best way to you know, compare, or the best version of Batman to use in comparisons or in battles or whatever. I just wish that fans would take the time to actually do something similar. Read enough of the character, see enough of the character so that you have a basis, then talk about the character. Because sometimes in the comments, especially on videos I do, there's a lot of people that are subscribers that they know their shit, and they point things out because I've actually seen them do it. And I actually commend people who do it. I'm like, yeah, good job, that makes sense. But then there's a lot. Oh my God. And I know maybe it's just the nature of YouTube in general, but it kind of reflects on who is watching all this shit and who's reading all this shit. People don't know how to objectively critique shit, which is the reason why we both started doing reviews in the first place. They look at something, and because they like it, it's great, and that's it.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, even though there could definitely something wrong.
Yeah, there could be plenty wrong. And I'm not saying everything needs to be critiqued and needs to be, you know, ripped apart. No, I'm just saying when there is something to rip apart, go ahead. You know, I like a lot of things that I can admit suck. We were just talking about Cops. I grew up watching that show. That show sucks. I like the characters and I like the toys. When I go back and I watch the show is just pure comedy. Pure fucking comedy. But I liked it. I watched it all the time.
I watched the hell out of it when I was a kid.
Yeah, like, it was one of those shows where the marketing did a really good job and the toy line did a really good job to cloud your vision and your perception to make you think the shit was way better than it really was. I don't know, G.I. Joe. I grew up on G.I. Joe, but when you go back and watch it, it really was was not that great.
They had some good ideas, but some of the, since it was for kids, Paul Dini was a part of that shit.
I remember. So was Bruce Timm. I was like, man, woo. Some of that shit's really bad, but we love the characters.
The Fatal Furies.
The furries, yeah.
Furries, yeah.
Yeah, God. Ugh. But, we can look at the stuff and admit that it sucks. Shit, there were Ninja Turtles. The Ninja Turtles from the 80s, or late 80s, early 90s, the first week worth of episodes was awesome.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the entire series was completely hot garbage and like elephant barf. The shit was horrible. The jokes were corny and it kept getting cornier and cornier and cornier. And I remember when Turtles Forever came out, I watched it on YouTube, and in the comments, people were bitching about the fact that the 80s Turtles were all goofy and shit. And I'm like, but that's exactly how they were. That is exactly how they were. After the first 6 or 5 episodes, they were just complete goofball, corny ass like individuals with no type of then they should have just took ninja out of the title because they didn't do anything. Everything was slapstick. And people were complaining, and I'm like, what the fuck were you watching all those years? Like, I could go back and pick a random episode and there's more jokes than there are fight scenes. Whereas when the new version came out, and I've heard people talk shit about that series, the new version, past the theme song being horrible, it actually was more true to what the Turtles actually were. But people aren't looking at it objectively. They're clouded by nostalgia, and they're clouded by their own bias, and they're not allowing themselves to look at the information and say, given the information that's sitting in front of my fucking face, this is the conclusion I came to. And, I guess not everybody's capable of doing it, but as fans, since we're given something, and it seems like our medium, our hobby...
People need to try to get to do it.
Yeah, because this hobby...
People need to put forth more effort.
Yeah, for real. Because, comics are... It's going. Sales are always down. At conventions, they don't sell as many comics as they used to. It's all video games and shit like that. And if the video game companies are making games based on comics, what the fuck are you guys doing? We need to save the medium. I'm not saying it only because I make comics, but I'm saying it just because I like reading comics. I don't want to have to go and only buy old comics. I would like new shit to come out that is worth checking out, that I can, really get into. And the way it's going, every time I like a series, it just goes in the wrong direction, because,
or it ends.
Yeah, or they just cut it off completely.
Like the last good series I liked Runaways and Next Wave.
I liked Next Wave.
And both of those series just ended.
Yeah. The Next Wave was fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
And it was smart. It wasn't stupid. It wasn't like goofy. it wasn't pure goofball slapstick. It was slapstick, but there was a point and stuff like all the guest stars were in character. It didn't feel like, you know, the Punisher shows up, he's still killing people just like he always does. He's still dark as fuck with those one-liners, but he's not as goofy as the rest of those characters just because he's in a Next Wave book, you know? It was kind of like the old What Ifs and like Damage Control and all that shit. Whenever those books dealt with something other than the main heroes, the heroes would show up and still be in character. It wasn't like Mad Magazine, you know what I mean? Even though comedy was the focus. And, well, not in What If, but, you know, in Damage Control it was more comedic than it was serious. But, all that shit, it's just, you know, how often do you get that? We don't get it at all. Fans of action figures, man, you guys are slipping. All these ACBA cats, man, like, I know you do it for fun and all, but sometimes the information is lacking. It's like, you can't just like it just because. I mean, I guess you can do whatever you want, but then we're going to keep getting crap.
Yeah.
And then you can't complain that we got crap because you've been giving them a pass for years. I mean, I was talking to a dude today on the G.I. Joe page on Facebook, and the dude was talking about having Joes in the Marvel Legends scale because they're made by the same company. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be cool as long as they're not like the new return of Marvel Legends with those dumbass wide joints that go up into their hips. And we went back and forth for a while. He was explaining what he would envision it to be like, and I was pointing out the things that I thought needed to go, because I bought the whole wave minus, what, 2 figures for Alexander, my son. So I've seen all of them. The best figure in the wave was Thor. Second best was Terrax, and that was the Build-A-Figure. Like, that doesn't even make sense. But then, terrible. But then if you go on YouTube and you look at all these reviews, people are gonna say fucking Claw was an awesome figure. Claw's an anorexic figure with a generic body mold and like 3 paint applications on his whole person, and then he doesn't even look like the artwork on the box.
Damn.
His hand is out of scale. There's all kinds of issues. And
why didn't they do the new version where he's like, where he's not even wearing a costume?
Yep. Was he wearing like safari gear and shit?
Yeah. Or when he appeared in when they revamped Black Panther, and he just kind of had like on a trench coat and some shit, and his the claw hand transformed and stuff. Yeah. They could have did that.
Instead, they gave you like the fucking 1940s or 1960s Hellfire Club looking with the Sentinel face.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? And people said the shit was awesome. I'm like, dude, you guys need to step it up. Your expectations are too low, and you're not even looking at the shit. You're just buying. And like, this is why Hasbro can say, what are you talking about? Our sales were fine. Or this is why they can tell you shit like, if you don't buy this character, we're not going to make the next wave of characters. Shit, Mattel was doing that crap with Young Justice. It's like they refused to acknowledge that their business model was horrible. Instead, they were giving us why would we pay $20 for the sidekicks of the major heroes that we have a line that's dedicated to all of the heroes, and those figures cost less than $20. So just because they put a big ass base in the box, you're paying 20 plus for sidekicks. And I know that in the show they were trying to tell you, we're not sidekicks. Yeah, you're fucking sidekicks. Sorry, that's the role you play.
Isn't that why they formed in the first place?
For real, but they're trying to show you, they're trying to prove their worth and stuff, and that's good stuff for the story. But in reality, when I buy a Robin figure, it's because he's Batman's fucking sidekick. There's no way to explain it. That's why I'm buying a Robin figure.
Mm-hmm.
So like, just because he comes with a big ass base doesn't mean I want to pay $20. So anyway, most of us didn't buy it. Most of us like real DC fans that like those figures, we didn't buy all those figures. We bought a couple of them, and then we're like, dude, I can't pay $20 a pop for each figure just because it has a base that's taking up too much space. And most of those bases are in my junk box because I don't even fuck with that. I don't need bases. I have display cases for them. So they pulled the Young Justice line. Then fans complained. And I'm like, but if you liked it, why didn't you just continue buying it? But you didn't buy it because it was a subpar product. So this was one time where the fans voted with their wallets, and it worked, but then some fans didn't understand what they were doing when they did it. Like, understand how shit works.
That's the problem with Deadpool, like you were saying before.
Oh God,
there's so many hardcore fans of Deadpool
that don't buy comics.
But yeah, his books never
sell.
They never go past like 50 issues or something. I think the longest one was like Cable and Deadpool. That was the only book that I think went past like 50 issues. But then I don't even think they're doing that anymore. I think they just went back to his own solo series or something like that.
I know he has a solo series and he's on X-Force now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you vote with your wallet. You know, if you like something, you put the money into it. Just like I said with the Masters of the Universe and Voltron and Godzilla and shit like that. Look at all the fucking tokusatsu shit that's out there, like Kamen Rider and fucking, you know, the different Rangers in Japan and in the U.S. The Japanese figures of any given Ranger, they're usually done by fucking SH Figure Arts, at least lately, and they cost at least $50 a pop. And they're still making them. And that's for each fucking Ranger. That means 3 of them are going to be exactly the same bodies with different heads. And 2 of them are going to be the same bodies with different heads. Because it's usually 2 girls and 3 guys.
Yeah.
And people pay $50 a pop to get the same body 3 times in different colored paint and molds with different heads. And then the same 2 female characters. They buy the same body twice. I mean, you do the math. That's a lot of money. And it's still going. And they don't tell you shit like, oh, making figures is so expensive. We don't know how to... We have to cut costs so that we can actually continue making the fucking figure that our company was created to do. You really buy that shit? There was a guy on YouTube that I saw a while back that was saying that he talked to one of the guys that is the... he was the head of the Marvel Legends division of Toy Biz, and now he's in charge of Marvel Legends at Hasbro. And he's talking about how there's so many costs and so many things, licensing and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. But he failed to mention how there are individual departments that handle all those things.